Standing in the James River Grand Club, I watched my father toast to his legendary career before laughing at me in front of 200 guests. He called me uneducated and worthless, a charity case he tolerates. He has no idea that the vendor contract keeping his company alive is waiting on my phone for a signature. He thinks I am powerless, but as I turn to leave, I am the one deciding whether his legacy survives the night. My name is Penelope Ramirez. I am 34 years old, and tonight I am standing in the center of the James River Grand Club in Richmond, Virginia, watching my father burn the bridge between us for the final time. The room smells of old money. It is a specific scent, a mixture of expensive gin, starch, floral centerpieces that cost more than a mid-sized sedan, and the underlying rot of desperation masked by heavy cologne. The crystal chandeliers overhead are vibrating slightly from the sheer volume of the applause. 200 people are clapping. They are the elite of Richmond, the captains of logistics, the politicians who shake hands with palms greased by corporate donations, and the socialites who measure worth by the zip code of your summer home. They are all looking at Preston Hale. To them, he is a titan. He is the legendary CEO of the Hale Linehaul Group, a man who built a trucking and logistics empire from the ground up, or so the brochure says. Tonight is his retirement party. It is meant to be his coronation as a legacy figure. He stands on the raised platform, bathed in a warm spotlight that smooths out the deep wrinkles on his forehead and hides the liver spots on his hands. He looks every inch the patriarch. He is wearing a tuxedo that fits him perfectly, his silver hair coiffed back, his smile wide and benevolent. I stand near the back of the VIP circle, holding a glass of champagne that has gone warm in my hand. I have not taken a sip. I am wearing a simple black dress. It is elegant, tailored, and cost $4,000, though no one in this room would guess that. To them, I am just Penelope, the mistake, the daughter from the first marriage who never quite fit the mold, the Ramirez in a room full of Hales. My father raises his hands, silencing the room with the practiced ease of a monarch. The applause dies down to a respectful hush. "Thank you," he says, his voice booming without the need for the microphone, though he uses one anyway. "Thank you all. 40 years. It has been 40 years of grit, diesel, and American determination, but a man does not build a legacy alone. He builds it for his family." He sweeps his arm to the left, gesturing to where his wife, Marjorie, and her son, Grant, are standing. They are beaming. They look like a magazine cover. Marjorie is dripping in diamonds that reflect the chandelier light, her smile fixed in porcelain. Grant is 37, tall, handsome in a vacant sort of way, and currently puffing out his chest as if he personally laid the asphalt for the interstate highways his stepfather's trucks drive on. "Marjorie," my father says, his voice thick with performative emotion. "My rock, my partner." The crowd coos. It is disgusting. "And Grant," he continues, placing a heavy hand on my stepbrother's shoulder, "my successor, the future of Hale Linehaul. I step down tonight, knowing that the company is in hands that are capable, strong, and ready to lead us into the next century." There is a round of applause, though it is slightly less enthusiastic than before. People in the industry talk. They know Grant. They know he spends more time on the golf course than looking at profit and loss statements. They know he has the business acumen of a golden retriever, but they clap anyway because that is what you do at the James River Grand Club. You clap for the lie because it is polite. Then, my father's eyes scan the crowd. They find me. For a second, I think he might skip me. It would be a mercy. It would be the standard Hale treatment, ignoring the thing that does not fit. But tonight, Preston Hale is feeling expansive. He is feeling powerful. He wants to show the world his benevolence, which means he has to acknowledge the charity case. "And, of course," he says, his tone shifting. It drops an octave, becoming visibly softer, dripping with a condescending pity that hits me like a physical slap. "We have Penelope." He gestures to me. 200 heads turn. I feel the weight of their gaze. It is heavy, judging, and amused. "Come here, honey," he says. I do not move. I stay planted in my spot, my spine straight, my face neutral. He laughs, a rich, hearty chuckle that invites the room to share in the joke. "She is shy, always has been. You know, folks, every family has that one bird that just cannot quite catch the wind." The room titters. A few people glance at each other, grinning. "Penelope," he continues, shaking his head with a theatrical sigh. "She has had a hard road. No degrees to hang on the wall, no big career to brag about. She is 34 and still finding her way, living a quiet life." He pauses for effect. This is the kill shot. "But that is what family is for, isn't it?" He beams, spreading his arms wide. "To support the ones who cannot support themselves. To write the checks for the ones who are uneducated and worthless in the business world, but who we love anyway because they are ours. To carry the dead weight because blood is thicker than water." The room explodes into laughter. It is not a gentle laughter. It is not the laughter of people who are laughing with me. It is the laughter of exclusion. It is the sound of a tribe identifying the outsider and confirming their own status by mocking her. They are laughing because they are relieved they are not me. They are laughing because Preston Hale, the great man, has just given them permission to treat me like a joke. Marjorie puts a hand over her mouth to hide a smirk. Grant does not bother hiding his. He grins at me, raising his glass in a mock toast. I feel the heat rise up my neck, but I do not let it reach my face. My expression remains frozen. I look at my father. I look at the man who missed my college graduation because he had a golf tournament. The man who told me, 12 years ago, that I was not worth the investment of tuition. The man who thinks I have spent the last decade drifting through life, surviving on the meager allowance he sends to assuage his guilt, an allowance I donate to charity every single month without him knowing. He thinks I am a stray cat he feeds on the back porch. He has absolutely no idea who is standing in his living room. The laughter begins to die down, replaced by the clinking of glasses. They think the moment is over. They think I will do what I always do, look at the floor, swallow the humiliation, and disappear into the shadows. But the shadows are full. I have been living in them for too long. I take a step forward. The movement is small, but it catches the eye of the people closest to me. They part, creating a small lane toward the stage. I do not walk up to the platform. I stop in the center of the room, under the largest chandelier. "Dad," I say. I do not shout, but my voice carries. I learned how to project my voice in boardrooms filled with angry teamsters and arrogant suppliers. I learned how to speak so that people stop typing on their phones and listen. The room goes quiet. The silence is sudden and sharp. My father looks down at me, his smile faltering just a fraction. He looks annoyed, like a director whose prop has started speaking out of turn. "Penelope," he says, his tone warning. "We are in the middle of a celebration, honey." "I know," I say. I raise my champagne glass. The liquid inside is golden and dead. "I just wanted to add a toast." Preston stiffens. Marjorie steps forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. She senses danger. She always had good instincts for social disaster. "To Preston Hale," I say, my voice steady, cold, and clear as a bell. "The legend, the man who built everything with his own 2 hands, the man who knows the value of every single person in this room." My father relaxes slightly. He thinks I'm capitulating. He thinks I'm groveling. "And to clarity," I add, "because tonight, you have made everything perfectly clear. You called me uneducated. You called me worthless. You told these 200 people that I am nothing but a burden you carry." The silence in the room stretches tight. It is brittle. One wrong move, and it will shatter. "You are right, Dad," I say. "I am not the daughter you wanted. I am not the heir you chose." I look at Grant. He is not smirking anymore. He looks confused. I look back at my father. I lock eyes with him. I want him to remember this moment. I want him to remember the exact shade of brown in my eyes when his world collapses. Congratulations on your retirement, I say. Enjoy the party. This is the last time you will ever see me. I do not wait for a response. I do not wait for him to sputter or for Marjorie to gasp. I turn around. I drop the champagne glass. I do not throw it. I simply open my fingers and let it fall. It hits the marble floor with a loud, violent crash. The crystal shatters. The wine splashes onto the hemlines of the women standing nearby. But they are too shocked to jump. I walk away. My heels strike the floor with a rhythmic, military precision. Click, click, click. The sound echoes in the cavernous silence of the ballroom. No one speaks. No one moves to stop me. I can feel their eyes on my back, stinging like wasps, but I do not flinch. I do not hurry. I walk at my own pace, the pace of a woman who has somewhere else to be. I push through the heavy oak doors of the club and step out into the lobby. The air here is cooler, free of the scent of hypocrisy. The valet captain, a man named Thomas, whom I have known for years, sees me coming. He sees the look on my face and snaps to attention. "Miss Ramirez," he says, "are you leaving already?" "Yes, Thomas," I say. "My car, please." He nods and rushes out the side door. I stand in the lobby, staring at a painting of a fox hunt on the wall. The fox is cornered. The hounds are baring their teeth. I know exactly how the fox feels. But unlike the fox, I have teeth of my own. Thomas brings my car around. It is not the beat-up Honda my father thinks I drive. It is a rental. A black sedan I picked up at the airport. Sleek and anonymous, I slide into the driver's seat and close the door, shutting out the world of the James River Grand Club. Silence. Finally, I take a deep breath, inhaling the smell of leather and solitude. My hands are not shaking. My heart is beating slowly, steadily. I expected to feel sad. I expected to feel the old sting of rejection that used to make me cry into my pillow when I was 22. But I feel nothing. I feel a hollow, clean space where my desire for his approval used to be. It has been burned out, leaving only ash and resolve. My phone buzzes on the passenger seat. The screen lights up in the darkness of the car. It is a single message. The name on the screen is Maya Brooks. Maya is my chief financial officer. She is the only person in the world, besides my lawyer, who knows the full truth. She knows that I do not live in a studio apartment. She knows I do not work as a waitress. She knows that for the last 10 years, while my family was busy ignoring me, I was building something else. I pick up the phone. The light from the screen reflects in my eyes. Maya Brooks. The renewal contract for Hale Line Haul is on your desk. They are desperate. They need the carrier capacity locked in by midnight, or they lose their shipping rating. Your father's team has been calling every 10 minutes, pending your signature. What is the decision? I stare at the words, Hale Line Haul Group, my father's empire, the company he just bragged about, the company Grant is supposed to lead into the future. What my father did not mention in his speech, because he probably does not know, or refuses to admit, is that Hale Line Haul is a dinosaur. It is bloated, inefficient, and bleeding cash. Its own trucking fleet is falling apart. For the last 3 years, the only thing keeping his company's logistics network from collapsing completely is a third-party vendor, a vendor that manages their overflow, optimizes their routes, and provides the digital infrastructure they are too cheap to build themselves. That vendor is a company called Lumen Route Advisory. They think Lumen Route is a faceless corporation based in Kansas City. They think they are dealing with a team of nameless algorithms and account managers. They have been praising Lumen Route for saving their quarterly profits for 12 quarters in a row. My father mocked me for being uneducated. He mocked me for being worthless. He thinks I am nothing. He does not know that I am the founder and CEO of Lumen Route Advisory. He does not know that the uneducated girl he just humiliated is the one holding the oxygen mask to his dying company. I look back at the entrance of the club. I can imagine them inside. The waiters are probably sweeping up the glass. My father is probably making a joke to smooth things over. telling everyone that I am emotionally unstable, that I'm having a breakdown. Grant is probably ordering another scotch. They are moving on. They think the scene is over. I look down at the phone again. I type a reply. My thumb hovers over the send button for a fraction of a second, not out of hesitation, but out of savoring the moment. Penelope. Do not sign. Let the contract expire. I hit send. Maya. Copy that. Letting it expire. They are going to panic. I type one more line. Penelope. I know. Initiate the termination protocol. And Maya? Prepare the disclosure documents. It is time they find out who they have been doing business with. I toss the phone back onto the passenger seat. I put the car in gear. As I drive away from the James River Grand Club, watching the lights of the ballroom fade in my rearview mirror, a small, cold smile touches my lips. My father was right about one thing. He really won't see me again. Not the version of me he thinks exists. The next time he sees me, I will not be the daughter standing in the back of the room. I will be the one sitting across the table, owning the chair he is trying to sit in. I turn onto the main road and accelerate. The night is dark, but the road ahead is perfectly illuminated. So, the game begins. To understand why I let the champagne glass shatter on the floor of the country club tonight, you have to go back 12 years. You have to understand the specific architecture of silence that was built around me. People think of abusive families as loud places. They imagine screaming matches, flying crockery, and bruises hidden under long sleeves. That was not my life. My life was a long, suffocating quiet. It was the feeling of being a ghost in a house that belonged to the living. It started when my mother died. She passed away from a sudden, aggressive cancer when I was 22. She was the color in the house. She was the one who played music in the kitchen and laughed at my father's dry jokes until he actually smiled. When she died, the house in Richmond did not just become sad, it became sterile. My father, Preston, did not know how to grieve, so he simply replaced the missing parts of his life with new inventory. That is how he ran his business, and that is how he ran his heart. Less than a year after the funeral, Marjorie moved in. Marjorie was beautiful in a terrifyingly polished way. She was the kind of woman who never had a hair out of place and whose smile never quite reached her eyes. She brought with her a son, Grant Larkin. Grant was 3 years older than me, a man who had failed to launch 3 different times and was looking for a runway. My father provided one. The abuse, if you can call it that, though I struggled to name it for years, was not physical. Marjorie never raised a hand to me. Grant never shoved me. My father never yelled. Instead, they simply erased me. It is a strange psychological torture to be invisible in your own home, at the dinner table. I would ask a question, perhaps about the weather or the news, and Marjorie would turn to Grant and ask him about his tennis game, speaking right over my voice as if it were merely a draft from an open window. If I did something well, like making the dean's list at the state university, it was acknowledged with a vague nod, if at all. But if Grant managed to simply show up to a networking lunch on time, my father would spend 20 minutes over dessert praising his emerging leadership skills. I was the glitch in their perfect new family matrix. I was the Ramirez remnant, the brown-eyed, dark-haired reminder of the wife Preston wanted to forget. Grant and Marjorie were the Hale ideal, tall, fair, and eager to spend money they did not earn. There was only one person who saw me, Estelle Hale, my grandmother. She was a formidable woman, the kind of matriarch who wore tweed suits and believed that crying was a private activity, like prayer or hygiene. She lived in the guest cottage on the estate. She did not say much, but she watched everything. One afternoon, I was sitting in the garden, reading a textbook on supply chain logistics. I was fascinated by the movement of goods, the mathematical beauty of getting things from point A to point B. Grant walked by with his golf clubs, saw me, and laughed. "You know girls don't run trucking companies, right, Penny?" he sneered. "You are wasting your time with that math. You should be reading magazines." He walked away, laughing at his own wit. I stared at the page, my face burning. Then I heard the click of a cane. Grandmother Estelle was standing behind me. She looked at Grant's retreating figure, then down at me. "The loudest engine is usually the one with the most loose screws," she said sharply. She pointed a gnarled finger at my book. "Read the chapter on marginal gains again. You missed a nuance in the case study." She walked away without a hug or a smile. But she had read the book. She knew what I was studying. She was paying attention. That small crumb of validation was the only thing that kept me from starving. I tried so hard to be worthy. I thought that if I just worked harder, if I just proved I was not a burden, they would finally look at me with the same adoration they gave Grant. I attended the state university because it was cheaper, even though I got into better schools. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I worked 20 hours a week at a library and another 10 hours tutoring Spanish to pay for my own books and gas. It did not matter. To Preston and Marjorie, I was a drain, a leak in the hull. They constantly made comments about how expensive kids these days were, always directing the sigh toward my side of the table. Even though Grant was driving a BMW my father leased, and I was driving a 10-year-old Civic I paid for myself. Then came the day that broke me. It was a Tuesday evening in late August. I had just finished my junior year with a perfect 4.0 grade point average. I was preparing for my senior year. I had plans. I was going to apply for a specialized master's program in logistics. I had it all mapped out. My father called a family meeting. We gathered in the study. It was a masculine room, smelling of leather and unsmoked cigars. My father sat behind his massive mahogany desk. Marjorie sat on the velvet sofa, looking concerned in a way that suggested she had rehearsed the expression in a mirror. Grant was leaning against the bookshelf, looking bored, checking his watch. I sat in the stiff wooden chair facing the desk. "Penelope," my father started. He folded his hands on the desk. "We need to talk about the future." "Okay," I said. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he was finally going to ask about my grades. Maybe he was going to offer me an internship at Hale Line Hall. "Business has been tight," he lied. I knew the numbers. I read the trade papers. Hale Line Hall was not booming, but it was certainly not broke. "We have to make some hard choices about resource allocation." He used corporate speak to distance himself from the fact that he was talking about his daughter's life. "I have been looking at the expenses," he continued. "Supporting 2 adult children is a heavy load, and we have to prioritize the investments that yield the best return for the family legacy." My stomach turned over. I knew where this was going, but I could not believe he was actually going to say it. "Grant has been accepted into the executive MBA program at Duke." My father beamed. He looked at Grant with pure pride. "It is a prestigious opportunity. It is vital for his future as the leader of this company. But the tuition and the living expenses are significant." He paused. He looked at me, and his eyes went dead. "I cannot afford to pay for Grant's MBA and your final year of college, Penelope." The room went silent. The clock on the mantel ticked. 1 second, 2 seconds. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I have a scholarship that covers half. I work. I only need help with the remaining tuition. It is a fraction of what Grant's program costs." "It is not just the money," Marjorie chimed in. Her voice was soft, like syrup laced with arsenic. "It is about focus, sweetheart. Grant is at a critical juncture. He needs our full support." "So I have to drop out?" I asked. "I have 1 year left. 1 year." "You can take a break," my father said, waving his hand dismissively. "Get a full-time job. Save up. Finish later. Or not. It is not like you are going to use the degree for anything serious." "I am studying supply chain management," I said, my voice shaking. "I am top of my class. I could help the company." Grant laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of amusement. "Come on, Penny, you are going to help the company? You are a girl who organizes bookshelves. Leave the heavy lifting to the men." I looked at my father, begging him to defend me, begging him to say that I was smart, that I was capable, that I was his daughter. He just shrugged. "Grant is right. Penelope, the industry is tough. It is not really a place well, for someone of your disposition." Then Marjorie delivered the final blow. She leaned forward, placing a manicured hand on my knee. Her touch felt like ice. "Oh, honey, don't look so tragic," she said. "Honestly, why do you need a high degree anyway? You are a pretty girl. You don't need a career. You need to find a good husband. That is the best security a woman can have. Let Grant handle the business. You focus on settling down." I looked at her. I looked at Grant, who was smirking. I looked at my father, who had already opened a file folder and was looking at papers, signaling that the meeting was over. They had discussed this without me. They had voted, and the verdict was that Grant was the investment, and I was the expense to be cut. I felt something crack inside my chest. It was not a heart attack. It was the sound of my childhood breaking. It was the sound of the last thread of hope, the hope that they would ever love me, snapping under the weight of their indifference. I could have screamed. I could have cried. I could have thrown the heavy brass paperweight at my father's head, but I didn't. I remembered Grandmother Estelle's voice. The loudest engine has the loose screws. If I screamed, I was just the emotional, hysterical daughter. I was the problem. If I cried, I was weak. I stood up. My legs felt steady, surprisingly steady. "I understand," I said. My father looked up, surprised by my easy acquiescence. "You do?" "Yes," I said. "You have to prioritize the family asset. It makes perfect business sense." I was not agreeing with him. I was mocking him, but he was too arrogant to hear it. He thought I was finally accepting my place. "Good girl," he said, relieved. "I knew you would be reasonable. We will stop the tuition checks effective next month. You have a few weeks to figure out your living arrangements." "Thank you for the clarity," I said. I walked out of the study. I walked up the stairs to my room. I closed the door and locked it. I did not pack immediately. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at my hands. They were shaking now. I clenched them into fists until the knuckles turned white. They thought they had just trimmed a budget line item. They thought they had just put a pause on my little hobby of going to school. They thought I would go out, get a job as a receptionist, find a husband, and fade into the background of family barbecues, forever grateful for whatever scraps they threw me. They were wrong. Marjorie's words echoed in my head. Girls don't need high degrees. I closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I saw the future. It was not the future they planned for me. It was a future where I did not need them. A future where I did not need a husband to survive, or a father to validate me. I stood up and went to my desk. I pulled out a fresh notebook. I did not write a diary entry about my feelings. I wrote a list. 1. Withdraw from the university tomorrow to avoid tuition penalties. 2. Sell the car. 3. Cash out the small savings bond Mom left me. 4. Leave Richmond. I was not just leaving a house. I was leaving a mindset. As I packed my bag that night, just one suitcase, because I didn't want to take anything they had bought me, a single sentence repeated in my mind like a mantra. It was a promise. It was a threat. It was the fuel that would burn for the next 12 years. From this moment on, my value is written by me. I zipped the suitcase shut. The sound was loud in the quiet room. It sounded like a guillotine falling. I was 22 years old. I had $3,000 to my name. I had no degree. I had no family. But as I looked at myself in the mirror one last time, I realized I had something better. I had nothing left to lose. And that made me dangerous. I left Richmond with a single suitcase and a burning sensation in my chest that felt a lot like liberation, but tasted like bile. I bought a one-way bus ticket. I did not head to New York or Los Angeles, the places where people go to find themselves in movies. I went to where the work was. I went to Kansas City, Missouri. If you look at a map of American logistics, Kansas City is the beating heart. It is where the rail lines from the west meet the trucks from the east. It is a city of warehouses, distribution centers, and diesel fumes. It was the perfect place to disappear. I rented a studio apartment on the fringes of the industrial district. It was a generous description to call it an apartment. It was a box with a window that rattled in its frame. The building was so close to the train tracks that every time the Union Pacific freight line rolled through at 3 in the morning, my toothbrush would vibrate off the sink and fall into the toilet. I did not mind the noise. The sound of the trains was the sound of commerce. It was the sound of things moving, of value being created. It was the opposite of the stagnant silence of the Hale mansion. I needed money, and I needed it immediately. I got 2 jobs within 48 hours of arriving. By day, I worked at a mid-sized warehouse as a floor coordinator. My job was to clip papers onto clipboards and make sure the forklift drivers did not load the wrong pallets. It was dusty, hot, and physical. By night, I waited tables at a 24-hour diner called the Iron Skillet. I learned that the heavier the tray, the less likely a customer was to tip, and that the smell of grease never really washes out of your hair. My father had called me uneducated. He was technically right. I had no diploma, but he made the mistake of thinking education only happens inside ivy-covered buildings with tuition fees that cost more than a house. I created my own curriculum, every night, after my shift at the diner ended at 2 in the morning. I would sit at my wobbly kitchen table with a stolen laptop charger and a Wi-Fi signal I borrowed from the neighbor. I did not sleep much. Sleep was for people who had safety nets. I devoured free online courses. I studied linear programming. I learned the mathematics of forecasting. I mastered the art of inventory turnover and carrier negotiation. I learned that supply chain management is not just about moving boxes. It is about predicting the future. It is about seeing a storm in the Atlantic and knowing it will delay a shipment of microchips in Taiwan, which will stop a production line in Detroit 3 weeks later. I treated the warehouse job as my laboratory. While the other coordinators were taking smoke breaks, I was watching the floor. I watched the flow of goods like a hawk watching a field for mice. I noticed that the forklift drivers spent 18% of their time driving empty forks because the picking route was inefficient. I noticed that we were paying for expedited shipping on items that sat on the receiving dock for 2 days. I saw the waste. It was invisible to everyone else, but to me, it glowed like neon. My break came 6 months in. The warehouse was owned by a man named Derek Shaw. Derek was a good man, but he was tired. He was losing margins to the big conglomerates, and he looked like he carried the weight of the roof on his shoulders. One Tuesday, the system crashed. We had 40 trucks waiting in the yard and no idea where to put the incoming inventory. Derek was standing in the middle of the floor, rubbing his temples, looking like he was about to scream. I walked up to him. I was wearing my high-visibility vest and steel-toed boots. "Mr. Shaw," I said. He looked at me, blinking. "Not now. Penelope, we are drowning here." "I know," I said. "I can fix the staging area, but you have to let me change the intake protocol, just for today." He looked at the chaos. He looked at the angry drivers honking in the yard. He looked at me. He saw a 23-year-old girl with dark circles under her eyes. But he also saw that I was the only person not panicking. "Do it," he said. "If you mess it up, you are fired." I did not mess it up. I reorganized the bay assignments based on turnover speed rather than alphabetical order. I created a manual triage system using colored stickers I found in the supply closet. Within 2 hours, the yard was clear, the trucks were unloaded, the drivers were gone. Derek found me in the break room afterwards. He put a cup of coffee in front of me. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked. "I read," I said. "You saved me $4,000 in detention fees today," he said. "Come to the office tomorrow. You are done pushing clipboards." That was the beginning. Derek gave me the one thing my father never did: a chance. He let me touch the data. I started analyzing his entire operation. I found billing errors. I renegotiated fuel surcharges. I optimized the labor shifts. In 3 months, I cut his operating costs by 12%. Word got around. The logistics world in Kansas City is small. People talk at the dive bars where the dispatchers hang out. They started talking about the girl at Shaw Distribution who could find money in the cracks of the floorboards. I started getting offers for side work. Small trucking companies, local distributors. They had spreadsheets they could not read and profits they were losing. They needed help. I realized I could not do this as Penelope Ramirez, the warehouse girl. They would not respect me. They would try to underpay me. I needed a shield. I registered a limited liability company. I sat at my kitchen table, listening to the train rattle my window, and typed the name into the state registry, Lumen Root Advisory. It sounded professional. It sounded established. It sounded like a firm with a glass office in downtown Chicago, not a laptop on a card table in Missouri. I built a website. I used stock photos of handshakes and container ships. I did not put my face on the About Us page. I did not list a CEO. I just listed an email address. contact@lumenroot.com. I hired a lawyer to draft a standard consulting contract. I made it ironclad. Payment up front for the analysis. Performance bonus for the savings identified. I became a ghost. My clients never met me. We communicated via email. We held conference calls where I kept my camera off. I let them assume what they wanted to assume. Most of them assumed Pio Ramirez was a man. They assumed I was an older industry veteran consulting from a home office. I never corrected them. I learned to read data the way other people read facial expressions. I could look at a spreadsheet of shipping manifests and tell you if a warehouse manager was stealing. I could look at a fuel report and tell you if a driver was taking the long way home to pad his hours. I could spot a lie in a column of numbers from a mile away. My principle was simple. I do not need their applause. I do not need them to know my story. I need the system to work. Efficiency became my religion. The clean, brutal truth of numbers became my comfort. There is no politics in math. There is no favoritism in a profit and loss statement. You are either profitable or you are not. You are either efficient or you are waste. 3 years passed. Lumen Root grew. I moved out of the apartment by the tracks and into a loft in the River Market District. I hired my first employee, then my second. I was making more money in a month than my father used to give me in a year, but I kept the anonymity. It was my power. It allowed me to walk into rooms, metaphorically, where I would never have been invited. It allowed me to tell hard truths to powerful men who would have dismissed me if they knew I was a young woman in a thrift store blazer. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a rainy Tuesday in November. I was sitting in my new office, reviewing a contract for a regional grocery chain. My inbox pinged. It was a request for proposal, a big one. The subject line read, Urgent, Network Optimization and Carrier Strategy Review. I opened the email. The sender was a procurement director for a massive conglomerate based on the East Coast. They were looking for a firm to overhaul their entire mid-Atlantic logistics network. They were bleeding cash, suffering from late deliveries, and desperate for a turnaround. They had heard of Lumen Root's reputation for aggressive efficiency. I clicked on the attachment to view the full scope of work. The document opened. At the top of the page, stamped in bold, blue ink, was a logo. It was a stylized wheel with wings, enclosed in a shield. My breath caught in my throat. The room seemed to tilt sideways. I knew that logo. I had drawn it in my notebooks when I was a child. I had seen it embroidered on my father's polo shirts every weekend of my life. It was the logo of the Hale Linehaul Group, but it was not just the parent company. The request was specifically for their legacy division, the core trucking unit that my father had built, the very heart of his empire, the unit that Grant was supposedly running. I stared at the screen. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. They were asking for help. They were admitting, in black and white, that they were failing, and they had come to the one company that could save them. They had come to me. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the monitor illuminating my face. A slow, dangerous realization crept over me. Fate was not just knocking on my door. It was handing me a sledgehammer. I looked at the signature line at the bottom of the email. It wasn't my father. It wasn't Grant. It was a new CFO. Someone I didn't know. They had no idea who owned Lumen Root. To them, I was just a vendor, a solution. I reached for my mouse. My hand hovered over the reply button. I could delete it. I could walk away. I could keep my life separate, clean, and safe here in Kansas City, or I could invite the vampire in and sharpen a stake while he wasn't looking. I clicked reply. The silence that followed my grandmother's death was heavy. It was not the peaceful silence of a library or a sleeping house. It was the heavy, pressurized silence that comes before a structural collapse. Estelle Hale had been the only person in the family who dared to tell Preston he was wrong. She did it quietly, often with just a raised eyebrow or a tapped cane. But she was the check on his ego when she died. The tether snapped. My father was now untethered, drifting into the stratosphere of his own arrogance. With no one left to pull him back to earth, I did not go to the wake at the house. I attended the funeral service at the cathedral. Standing in the back row, hidden behind a pillar, I watched my father dab at dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. I watched Marjorie hold his arm, looking appropriately somber in a designer veil. They played the part of the grieving family perfectly. I left before the service ended, slipping out the side door before anyone could spot the uninvited guest. 2 days later, my phone rang. I was in my office in Kansas City, analyzing a chaotic freight route for a mid-sized distributor in Ohio. The number on the screen was from Richmond, Virginia. I assumed it was a mistake, or perhaps a relative calling to scold me for not showing up to the reception. I answered with my professional voice. "This is Penelope. Miss Ramirez," a woman's voice said. It was crisp, authoritative, and completely unfamiliar. "My name is Nadine Crowell. I am an attorney practicing in Richmond. I am calling regarding the estate of Estelle Hale." I stopped typing. "My father handles the family legal matters," I said. My guard instantly going up. "If this is about a donation or—" "I do not work for your father," Nadine interrupted. Her tone was not rude, just precise. "I worked exclusively for your grandmother, and I am not calling the Hale family. I am calling you. I need you to come to Richmond tomorrow. There is a matter that requires your signature, and it cannot be handled via email." I flew back to Virginia the next morning. I did not tell anyone I was coming. I rented a car and drove straight to the address Nadine had given me. It was not one of the high-rise glass towers where my father's lawyers worked. It was a brownstone in a quiet, historic neighborhood, with a brass plaque by the door. Nadine Crowell was a woman in her 60s with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that looked like they had seen every variety of human greed and found it boring. She sat me down in a leather chair and poured me a cup of tea without asking if I wanted it. "Your grandmother was a very private woman," Nadine began, sitting behind her desk. "She was also very observant. About 7 years ago, shortly after you left for Kansas City, she came to me. She wanted to restructure her assets." "Restructure?" I asked. "She wanted to ensure that certain parts of her legacy went to the people who would actually value them," Nadine said. "She was aware of let us call it the tuition incident. She knew your father cut you off." I looked down at my hands. She never said anything to me about it. "Estelle believed that charity makes people weak, but investment makes them strong." Nadine said, "She watched you leave. She watched you struggle. She hired a private investigator, not to spy on you, but to monitor your progress. She knew about the warehouse job. She knew about the night shifts at the diner. She knew about Lumen Root." My head snapped up. "She knew?" "She was very proud," Nadine said. She opened a thick file folder on her desk. "She established a blind trust in your name. It has been accumulating interest for 6 years. The terms of the trust stated that you were to receive full control of the principal and the interest upon her death." Nadine slid a piece of paper across the desk. "This is the current balance," she said. I looked at the number. I had to blink to make sure I was reading it correctly. It was not a lottery win. It was not enough to buy an island, but for a woman who had built a business on credit cards and sleepless nights, it was a fortune. $3,450,000. I lost my voice. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I sat there, staring at the number, feeling the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. It wasn't the money. I had made money on my own. It was what the money represented. It was a bet. My grandmother had placed a bet on me. Why? I whispered. Why didn't she tell me? Because she wanted you to learn how to survive without it first, Nadine said. She reached into the folder again, and because she wanted you to have this, she handed me a letter. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored paper. My name was written on the front in my grandmother's shaky, elegant script, Penelope. I broke the seal. My hands were trembling. My dearest Penelope, if you are reading this, I am gone, and you are likely sitting in Nadine's office looking terrified. Do not be. You have earned every cent of what I am leaving you, not because of your blood, but because of your grit. I sat in that room the day Preston and Marjorie decided to cut you loose. I said nothing. I have regretted that silence every day since, but I also knew that if I intervened, if I wrote a check then and there, you would have stayed. You would have stayed in that house, small and quiet, trying to please people who are incapable of being pleased. You had to leave to find your voice. I have watched you from afar. I have seen you build something from nothing. You remind me of my husband, your grandfather. He understood that work is dignity. Preston does not understand that. He thinks value is something you inherit, not something you create. He is a weak man. Penelope. And weak men destroy the things they claim to love because they are terrified of losing control. You will need leverage. The world is not fair, and the high road is often a very lonely place to walk without good shoes. Use this money to buy the shoes. Use it to protect yourself. But listen to me closely. Do not use it to dirty your heart. Do not become them in order to beat them. Win by being exactly who you are. Love, Grandma Estelle. I folded the letter. I pressed it against my chest. I let myself cry. Just for a minute. I cried for the old woman who had sat in her cottage watching me read textbooks. I cried for the silence she had endured. And I cried because, for the first time in my life, I felt protected. I wiped my face. I looked at Nadine. What happens now? I asked. The funds are yours, Nadine said. Wire transfer, check, however you want it. It is clean. Taxes are paid, and the family knows nothing about it. As far as Preston knows, his mother's estate consisted of the house and the main portfolio, which he inherits. Good, I said. The sadness was receding, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. Keep it that way. What will you do with it? Nadine asked, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. I thought about Lumen Root. We were growing, but we were fragile. We were turning down big contracts because we did not have the staff or the server capacity. We were one bad month away from trouble. This money was not for buying a sports car. It was jet fuel. I am going to expand, I said. I am going to hire the best data analysts in the country. I am going to build a proprietary software platform that makes everything my father's company uses look like an abacus. And I am going to put $1 million aside in a separate, untouchable account, a break glass in case of emergency fund. Nadine smiled. It was a small, tight smile of approval. Estelle was right about you. She pushed a stack of documents toward me. Sign here to accept the transfer. And here, I signed. My pen scratched loudly in the quiet room. When I got to the final page, Nadine paused. There is one administrative detail, she said. The trust was established under your legal name, Penelope Hale. However, for the transfer to your business accounts, we need to clarify how you wish to be identified in the filing. You can retain the Hale name for these proceedings, or... I looked at the signature line, Penelope Hale. It looked wrong. It looked like a costume I had outgrown. Hale was the name of the man who mocked me. Hale was the name on the side of the trucks that were rotting from the inside out. Change it, I said. To what? Ramirez, I said. My mother's name, in all legal filings for Lumen Root, and in all matters regarding this trust. I am Penelope Ramirez. Nadine nodded and made a note. A statement? A definition, I corrected. I do not belong to the Hale dynasty. I never did. We finished the paperwork. I stood up to leave. I felt lighter, as if gravity had released its grip on my ankles. I shook Nadine's hand. "Thank you, Nadine," I said, "for everything." "Do not thank me," she said. "I was just following orders." I turned to the door. I had my hand on the brass knob when Nadine spoke again. Her voice was lower this time, laced with a specific kind of gravity. "Penelope?" I turned back. "Yes?" Nadine picked up the file folder. She did not close it. She just tapped her finger against the cover, a rhythmic, thoughtful tap. "There is one more thing," she said. "I thought we covered the assets." I said, "We covered the liquid assets," Nadine said. "The cash, the stocks in the general market, but Estelle held on to something else, something she did not put in the trust, but rather left in a separate, sealed execution protocol that activates only if certain conditions are met." "What conditions?" I asked. "If the family failed to honor her wishes regarding her charitable bequests," Nadine said, "which, knowing your father, he has likely already tried to bypass." I walked back toward the desk. "What did she leave?" Nadine looked at me over the rim of her glasses. Her eyes were gleaming with a secret that was both dangerous and delightful. "Your father believes he owns 100% of the voting control of Hale Linehall Group," Nadine said. "He believes that because he inherited the founding shares from his father, but he forgets that when the company was recapitalized in the late 90s, your grandmother bought a block of preferred stock to inject capital." My heart skipped a beat. "Preferred stock usually doesn't have voting rights." "Usually," Nadine agreed, "unless the company fails to meet certain solvency ratios, or unless the holder of the stock specifically negotiated a supervote clause in the event of a leadership crisis." She smiled, and it was the smile of a shark swimming in deep water. "Your father thinks those shares are symbolic. He thinks they are just a retirement income stream for an old lady. He has no idea that they represent a swing vote on the board of directors." "And where are those shares now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Nadine closed the folder. "They are in a dormant holding company," she said. "And guess who the sole beneficiary of that holding company is?" She did not have to say it. I looked at the file. The money was leverage. But this was the nuclear launch code. "He thinks he is the king," I said softly. "He is," Nadine said, "but he is sitting on a throne made of paper, and you just inherited the match." The offices of Lumen Root Advisory occupy the entire top floor of a renovated industrial building in the River Market district of Kansas City. It is a space of exposed brick, polished concrete, and aggressive silence. We do not have a ping-pong table. We do not have beanbag chairs or motivational posters. We have 18 employees, and every single one of them is a weapon of mathematical precision. I stand by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the Missouri River. It is a gray, churning body of water, relentless and indifferent. That is how I built this company. In the 3 years since I accepted my grandmother's inheritance, Lumen Root has evolved from a one-woman consultancy into a boutique powerhouse. We do not advertise. We do not chase clients. We specialize in high-complexity network optimization and warehouse cost reduction. It is dry, unglamorous work. We look at spreadsheets that would make a normal person weep with boredom, and we find the gold hidden in the margins. We find the 6% of fuel being wasted by bad routing. We find the 12% of labor hours lost to poor shift management. Our revenue is stable, more than stable. It is the kind of money that buys freedom. I hear the door to my office open. I do not turn around. Only one person enters without knocking. "The quarterly projections are up," Maya Brooks says. Maya is my chief financial officer. She is 40 years old, wears tailored suits that look like armor, and has a mind that operates like a forensic accountant dismantling a Ponzi scheme. She is sharp, disciplined, and terrifyingly loyal. I hired her 2 years ago when I realized I was spending too much time on compliance and not enough on strategy. Maya knows everything. She knows about the trust fund. She knows about the estrangement. She knows that my legal name is still Hale, even though my driver's license says Ramirez. "How much?" I ask, still watching the river. 8%, Maya says. She walks over and places a leather portfolio on my desk. But that is not why I am here. We need to talk about the whale. I turn around. Which one? The biggest one, she says. Hale Linehall Group. I walk to my desk and sit down. The chair is high-backed, ergonomic leather. It is a throne, though I would never say that out loud. I rest my hands on the cool surface of the desk. What do they want? I ask. They want to renew, Maya says. She opens the portfolio. And they are not playing games this time. They sent over a proposal this morning. They want a 5-year exclusive contract for our proprietary routing software and our inventory consulting services. I look at the document. The Hale Linehall logo stares back at me. For 3 years, my father's company has been my client. It started with that one desperate email I answered. Since then, LumenRoot has systematically dismantled their antiquated operations and rebuilt them. We optimized their Midwest shipping lanes. We cut their warehouse overhead by 15%. We saved them millions of dollars in their internal memos, which I see because I have access to their data. They call LumenRoot the efficiency backbone of the company. My father has praised our work in shareholder meetings. Grant has taken credit for our results in industry interviews. And yet, in 3 years, not a single person from the Hale family has ever met the owner of LumenRoot. It has been a masterclass in obfuscation. Every contract was signed by Maya. Every high-level strategy email came from the LumenRoot executive team. Every video conference was conducted with cameras off, citing bandwidth security protocols, or handled by my senior account managers. When I did have to speak on a call, I used a voice modulation software that flattened my tone and deepened the pitch just enough to be unrecognizable. To them, P. Ramirez is a reclusive genius, a data savant who prefers the shadows. They imagine an old man, or perhaps a socially awkward quant. They certainly do not imagine the daughter they discarded. A 5-year renewal, I repeat. That locks them in. It does more than that, Maya says, tapping the paper. Look at the fee structure they proposed. They are offering 20% above our standard rate. They are terrified of losing us. Without our system, their legacy fleet management falls apart in 6 months. I lean back. A smile plays on my lips. It is not a happy smile. My father is retiring, I say. He wants to secure the company's stability before he hands the keys over to Grant. He wants to wrap up a nice, tidy package so Grant doesn't crash the car in the first mile. That is my read as well, Maya says. So, what is the play? Do we sign? It is a lot of revenue. Penelope, it secures our overhead for half a decade. I do not answer immediately. I look at the pile of mail that my assistant placed on the corner of my desk earlier. On top of the stack of trade journals and invoices sits a heavy cream-colored envelope. It is distinct. It does not look like business mail. It looks like an invitation to a royal wedding. I reach out and pick it up. The paper is thick, textured cotton. My name is handwritten in calligraphy. Ms. Penelope Ramirez. They sent it to my business address. They do not know where I live. I slide a letter opener under the flap and slice it open. Inside is a card with gold-embossed lettering. The Board of Directors of Hale Linehall Group cordially invites you to celebrate the retirement of Preston Hale and the appointment of Grant Larkin as Chief Executive Officer, James River Grand Club, Richmond, Virginia, Saturday, the 14th of October. I stare at the gold text. It glimmers under the office lights. It is a summons. My father loves to have an audience. He invited Ms. Ramirez because I am a vendor. He likely had his secretary send invites to the top 50 vendors in their payable accounts. He has no idea he invited his daughter. Or maybe he does know. Maybe he sent one to the old address in Richmond, too, knowing it would bounce, just so he could say he tried. But this one found me. Penelope? Maya asks softly. I hold up the invitation. My father is throwing himself a party. Maya's expression tightens. Are you going? I haven't seen him in 12 years, I say. I haven't seen any of them. I missed weddings. I missed funerals. I missed birthdays. You built an empire, Maya reminds me. I did. I agree. I look at the contract again. 5 years. If I sign this, I save them. I validate Grant's leadership. I allow the Hale name to continue its slow, comfortable decline into mediocrity, propped up by my brilliance. If I don't sign, I look at the invitation. The James River Grand Club. I know that room. I know the smell of the lilies and the taste of the cheap champagne they serve to the B-list guests. I know exactly how my father will look standing on that stage. He thinks he has won. He thinks he has written the final chapter of his success story. I stare at the RSVP card. There is a small box next to the word accepts. I hesitate. For 10 seconds. The room is absolutely silent. I can hear the hum of the air conditioning. I can hear the blood rushing in my ears. Part of me, the part that is still 22 and wounded, wants to burn the invitation, wants to stay here in my glass tower, safe and rich and anonymous. But safety is not satisfaction, and anonymity is just another form of hiding. I pick up my pen. It is a heavy black fountain pen. I check the box. Accepts. I sign my name at the bottom. Not P, Ramirez, Penelope, just Penelope. I hand the invitation to Maya. Mail this, I say. Overnight delivery. Maya looks at the card, then at me. Her eyes widen slightly. She understands. She always understands. You are going to tell them, she states. It is not a question. I am done being the ghost in the machine. Maya, I say. I stand up and walk back to the window. The river looks different now. It looks like a road. They have spent 3 years profiting from a woman they called worthless. They have built their safety net out of the intelligence they mocked. And the contract? Maya asks. What do I do with the renewal? Do not sign it, I say. Let it sit on your desk. Let them sweat. Let them wonder why their loyal partner has suddenly gone silent. I turn to face her. My face is calm. The anger is there, but it is cold. It is a tool, sharp and ready for use. Pack your bags, Maya, I say. You are coming with me to Richmond. We have a party to attend. Maya stands up, tucking the portfolio under her arm. A small, fierce smile touches her lips. I will book the tickets, she says. First class? Private, I correct her. We are not flying commercial. Not for this. She nods and turns to leave. Maya, I call out before she reaches the door. She stops and looks back. This week, I say, and then I correct myself, switching back to the language of business, the language of war. This week, they are going to find out exactly who I am, but they are not going to find out from a press release. They are going to find out when I pull the chair out from under them. Maya nods. I will have the legal team prep the disclosure documents, just in case. Do it, I say. And Maya, make sure the termination clause in the current contract is highlighted. I have a feeling we are going to need it. She leaves the room. Closing the door softly behind her, I am alone again. I look at the empty space on my desk where the invitation used to be. The clock on the wall ticks. It is a countdown. My father wanted a legacy. I'm going to give him one. It just won't be the one he expects. I stepped through the double mahogany doors of the James River Grand Club and felt the immediate, pressurized shift in the atmosphere. It is a specific sensation. Entering a room where everyone believes they are better than you. It feels like walking into deep water. The air was chilled to a precise 68 degrees, smelling of expensive lilies, floor wax, and the metallic tang of old money. I had chosen my armor carefully. For years, my family had seen me in hand-me-downs or the practical, scour-resistant clothing of a warehouse worker. Tonight, I wore a dress I had purchased in Paris during a consultation trip with a European luxury carrier. It was black, architectural, and severe. It had no sequins, no lace, no desperate attempt to grab attention. It was made of silk crepe that absorbed the light rather than reflecting it. On my wrist, I wore a vintage Cartier tank watch, a piece that cost more than the Honda Civic I used to drive. It was small. It was subtle. It was the kind of detail that only people who really knew money would notice. I saw eyes dart toward me. I saw the quick, scanning glances of the Richmond elite, trying to calculate the cost of my outfit so they could rank me in the hierarchy. I saw confusion ripple through the room. They did not recognize the brand, but they recognized the quality. Before I could make it 3 steps into the foyer, Marjorie materialized. She was wearing a gold sequined gown that looked like it was trying to strangle her. Her hair was sprayed into a helmet of blonde perfection. She moved with the aggressive hospitality of a woman who considers herself the gatekeeper of the realm. She planted herself directly in my path, blocking my view of the ballroom. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on the hem of my dress, searching for a loose thread, a stain, anything she could critique. "Penelope," she said. Her voice was a sugary rasp. "You came." "Hello, Marjorie," I said. She leaned in, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper that was meant to be heard by the 3 women standing nearby. "I am so relieved. Your father was worried you would show up in, well, he thought you might not have anything suitable for a black tie event. We actually had a backup dress waiting in the coat check, just in case." It was a beautiful opening move. In one sentence, she had reminded me of my poverty, insulted my taste, and established her own benevolence. "That was very thoughtful," I said, my voice flat. "But as you can see, I managed to find something." Marjorie pursed her lips. She could not criticize the dress, and it annoyed her. "Well, try to blend in. We have the senator here tonight. And please, Penelope, do not drink too much. We do not want a scene." She gestured vaguely toward the back of the room. "You are at table 19. It is cozy." Table 19. I navigated the room, nodding at faces I vaguely recognized from a childhood spent in the shadows of this very club. Table 19 was exactly where I knew it would be. It was in the far back corner, directly next to the swinging double doors of the service kitchen. Every time a waiter burst out with a tray of filet mignon, a gust of steam and garlic hit the table. My dinner companions were the castaways of the Hale social orbit. There was a deaf great-aunt who was eating a bread roll with intense concentration, and a couple of mid-level managers from the Hale Line Hall accounting department who looked terrified to be there. They nodded at me politely, then went back to staring at their phones. I sat down. I did not check my phone. I sat with my back straight, observing the room. The center of the room was a different world. That was where my father held court. Preston Hale stood near the ice sculpture, a glass of scotch in one hand, his other hand gripping the shoulder of a local congressman. He looked robust, flushed with the adoration of the crowd. I focused my attention. I have trained myself to listen to conversations in noisy environments, a skill learned on warehouse floors where forklifts beep incessantly. "It is all about modernization," I heard my father say. His voice boomed. "You have to be willing to bring in the experts. We brought in this firm, Lumenroot, incredible group. They overhauled our entire Midwest corridor." I froze. "Is that right?" the congressman asked. "I heard their fees are astronomical." "You pay for quality," Preston bragged, puffing out his chest. "I told my team, I said, get me the best." I worked closely with them to design the new protocols. It takes a visionary to recognize talent. Bob, that is the secret. We saved $4 million in Q3 alone. I picked up my water glass to hide the involuntary twitch of my lips. He was taking credit. He was standing there, claiming he had worked closely with Lumenroot. He had never spoken to us. He had never even read the reports. He had signed the checks Maya put in front of him, and then patted himself on the back when the savings materialized. He was bragging about my brilliance to build his own statue. A shadow fell over my table. I looked up to see a cluster of women approaching. I recognized them. Aunt Linda and Cousin Sarah, distant relatives who only appeared when there was free food or a tragedy. "Penelope!" Linda cried out, her voice shrill. She did not hug me. She stood a safe distance away, clutching her pearls. "We were not sure you would make it. It is such a long drive from... Where is it? Kansas?" Missouri, I said. Kansas City, Missouri. Right, right, she waved her hand. The flyover states? How are you? Dear? You look thin. I am fine. Aunt Linda. Sarah, who was my age and currently on her third husband, leaned in with a look of predatory concern. We heard you were working in a restaurant? Or was it a factory? It must be so hard. Sweetie, you know, there is no shame in asking Preston for help. He talks about how worried he is about you, about your stability. There it was, the mental health trap. If I got angry, I was unstable. If I stayed silent, I was depressed. I am not struggling, Sarah, I said calmly. I am actually doing quite well. Sarah exchanged a look with Linda, a look that said, she is delusional. Of course you are, Linda soothed. Well, if you ever need to talk to someone, I have a wonderful therapist in Richmond. She specializes in women who have lost their way. I will keep that in mind, I said. They drifted away, satisfied that they had done their family duty by checking on the black sheep. I needed air. The kitchen doors swung open again, blasting me with the smell of roasting beef, and I stood up. I walked along the perimeter of the room, avoiding eye contact, and slipped out onto the stone terrace. The night air was crisp. The terrace overlooked the manicured golf course, which stretched out like a black velvet sheet in the darkness. I walked to the stone railing and gripped the cold masonry. My heart was beating a little faster than normal, not from fear, but from the sheer, overwhelming proximity to the lie. Nice dress. I did not turn around. I knew the voice. It was Grant. He stepped out of the shadows, a cigarette in one hand and a tumbler of dark liquor in the other. He was wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my first year's rent. He looked handsome, in a soft, unearned way. Grant, I acknowledged. He leaned against the railing next to me, exhaling a plume of smoke that drifted into my face. So, you came to see the coronation? Big of you. It is a retirement party, I said. It is a handover, he corrected, grinning. Dad is officially naming me CEO tonight. Paperwork is already done. The kingdom is mine, little sister. Congratulations, I said. I hope you are ready for the workload. Grant laughed. It was a wet, dismissive sound. Workload? That is what we have managers for. That is what we have vendors for. You know, Dad is obsessed with these Lumen Root people, a bunch of nerds in the Midwest running algorithms. I tell him, just pay them and let them sweat. I plan to cut their fees next year. They need us more than we need them. I turned my head slowly to look at him. Is that so? Everyone needs the hail name, Grant said. He flicked his cigarette ash over the railing. So, how is your little, whatever it is, the shop? Are you still playing businesswoman out there in the cornfields? It is not a shop, I said. Right, he smirked. A startup. Everyone has a startup these days. Let me guess. You are selling handmade soap? Or is it life coaching? He did not wait for an answer. He moved closer, his voice dropping to a sneer. You know, I give it 6 months, maybe a year. You will be back here, begging Dad for a condo allowance. And you know what? I might just give it to you. I am going to be a benevolent king. He reached out and patted my cheek. It was a patronizing, humiliating gesture, like petting a dog. Enjoy the shrimp, Penny. It is the most expensive thing you will eat all year. He turned and walked back inside. I stood there for a moment. I wiped my cheek where he had touched me. I felt a cold, hard knot tighten in my stomach. He was going to cut Lumen Root's fees. He was going to destroy the very lifeline that was keeping his inheritance afloat. Simply because he could. I looked at my watch. It was time. I turned and walked back into the ballroom. The lights were dimming. The chatter was dying down. A spotlight cut through the darkness, illuminating the small stage at the front of the room. My father walked into the light. The applause was thunderous. He soaked it up, waving, smiling, acting the part of the beloved patriarch. He adjusted the microphone. Thank you, he said. Thank you all. What a night. What a life. He launched into his speech. It was a masterpiece of revisionist history. He talked about the early days, omitting the loans he got from his father-in-law. He talked about the hard times, omitting the layoffs he ordered to save his bonus. Then he turned to his family. I could not have done this without my rock, he said, gesturing to Marjorie. She stood up, blowing kisses to the crowd. And my son, Grant, stand up, son. Grant stood, raising his glass. The room cheered. Grant is the future, Preston said. He has the vision. He has the hail steel in his spine. I stood in the shadows near the kitchen door, watching. I knew what was coming next. I had read the script in his eyes earlier. And, Preston said, his voice shifting into that familiar, pitying register. We have Penelope. The spotlight swung. It searched the room, blinded me for a second, and then settled on me. I was standing alone, away from the table. There she is, Preston said. My daughter. The room went quiet. You know, Preston continued, leaning on the podium. Business is hard. Life is hard. Not everyone is cut out for the climb. Penelope, well, she has always been a gentle soul, a little lost. He chuckled. The crowd chuckled with him. She doesn't have the degrees. She doesn't have the career. She has had to lean on us, and that is okay. That is what family does. We carry the ones who cannot walk on their own. He looked directly at me. Penelope, honey, I am glad you made it. Even if you don't understand the business talk, I am glad you could come and enjoy a good meal on us. We love you, even if you are, well, let us just say, even if you are still finding your way. He had called me uneducated. He had called me a burden. He had told 200 of the most powerful people in Virginia that I was a failure who survived on his charity. The laughter rippled through the room. It was the same laughter from 12 years ago, but colder. I did not look down. I walked forward. I moved out of the corner, into the center aisle. The click of my heels on the marble was rhythmic, steady. The crowd parted. Sensing something was wrong, I did not walk to the stage. I stopped in the center of the room, right under the main chandelier. I saw Marjorie stiffen. I saw Grant stop smiling. I saw my father look confused. I plucked a glass of champagne from the tray of a passing waiter. I held it up. The light caught the bubbles. Dad, I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a razor blade. Penelope, he said into the microphone. We are in the middle of a toast. I know, I said. I want to add one. I looked around the room. I met the eyes of the congressman. I met the eyes of the bankers. I met the eyes of the people who had just laughed at me. To Preston Hale, I said clearly. A man who values success above all else. A man who knows exactly what everyone is worth. My father smiled nervously. He thought I was agreeing with him. You said I was uneducated, I said. You said I was worthless. You said I live off your charity. The smile vanished. You are right, Dad, I continued. I don't have your name on my degrees. I don't have your name on my company. I don't have your help. I took a step closer. Congratulations on your retirement, and congratulations to Grant. I hope he knows how to negotiate a carrier contract without a safety net. I raised the glass higher. This is the last time you will see me, I said. Enjoy the night. It is the most expensive party you will ever throw. I did not drink the champagne. I extended my arm and opened my hand. The glass fell. It hit the floor with a violence that made people jump. The crystal shattered into 1,000 diamonds. The sound echoed in the stunned silence. I turned around. I did not run. I did not cry. I walked toward the exit. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. I could feel the confusion turning into shock. I walked past Marjorie, who was standing with her mouth open. I walked past the table where Aunt Linda was clutching her napkin. I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped out into the night. The silence of the parking lot was beautiful. I walked to my rental car. My phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a message from Maya. Maya. The termination notice is drafted. The disclosure packet is ready to send. Just say the word. I looked back at the glowing windows of the club. I could see the silhouettes of people moving inside. Frantic, confused. I typed one word. Now. I got into the car. I didn't look back. The bridge wasn't just burned. I had detonated the foundation, and as I drove away, I knew that inside that room, the ghost they had mocked was about to become the monster under their bed. The morning after the party did not bring sunlight. It brought a digital siege. I woke up in my hotel room in downtown Richmond to the sound of my phone vibrating against the nightstand. It was a relentless, angry buzzing, like a trapped insect. I rolled over and looked at the screen. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. There were 47 unread messages. I sat up, pulling the heavy duvet around me. The air in the hotel room was recycled and stale, a stark contrast to the sharp, cold clarity I had felt leaving the club the night before. I picked up the phone. I did not unlock it immediately. I just watched the notifications scroll by, analyzing the pattern of the attack. They were not asking why I had done it. They were not asking if I was angry. They were building a narrative. Aunt Linda. Penelope. Sweetheart, Marjorie told us about your episode. Please let us know you are safe. We can send a car. Cousin Sarah. We are so worried. Do you have your medication? You seemed so disoriented last night. Marjorie. Pick up the phone. We are not angry. We are just concerned. You are clearly having a breakdown. We can get you into a facility in quiet privacy. Do not talk to anyone. I let out a short, dry laugh. It was masterful. In less than 12 hours, they had spun my moment of truth into a psychiatric event. They were not scared of me. They were invalidating me. If I was crazy, then my words about being worthless and uneducated were just the ramblings of a sick woman, not the indictment of a cruel father. They were trying to scrub the stain out of the carpet before it set. Then came the message from Grant. Grant, you embarrassed Dad. If you want your allowance check next month, you better answer me. We are done playing nice. I deleted the thread without replying. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I did not look like a woman having a breakdown. I looked like a woman who was done with the rehearsal and ready for the main performance. I walked back into the bedroom and picked up my encrypted work phone. It was blinking with a priority alert from Maya. I dialed her number. She picked up on the first ring. They are hunting, Maya said. Her voice was tight, clipped, the voice of a general in the trenches. Tell me, I said, putting the phone on speaker as I started to pack my bag. Hale Linehall's procurement team has been trying to reach the Lumen Route executive office since 6 this morning, Maya reported. They are bypassing the account managers. They are demanding to speak to the principal owner. They are claiming it is a billing emergency, but I can smell the panic from here. Did they sign the renewal? I asked. No, Maya said. They did something more interesting. They sent a revised term sheet. They unilaterally increased their offer. They bumped the retainer fee by 30% and added a loyalty bonus if we sign within 24 hours. I paused, folding a silk shirt. They are throwing money at the wall to see if it sticks. They are terrified, Maya agreed. They know the contract expires in 3 days. If Lumen Route walks away, their entire logistics network goes dark. They don't have the internal capacity to route their own trucks anymore. They fired those teams 2 years ago to save money because we were doing it so well. They are trying to buy survival, I said. They think Lumen Route is just another greedy vendor. They think if they offer enough cash, the owner will take the deal. There is something else, Maya said. Her tone dropped. Our cybersecurity monitor flagged an intrusion attempt 20 minutes ago. My hands stopped moving. What kind of intrusion? Clumsy, Maya said. Someone from a terminal inside the Hale corporate headquarters tried to access the Missouri Secretary of State's database through a backdoor proxy. They were looking for the articles of incorporation for Lumen Route Advisory. They are trying to find a name, Penelope. They want to know who they are dealing with. Grant, I guessed. He is trying to find dirt on the vendor so he can squeeze them. He didn't get in, Maya assured me. The privacy shield held. All he saw was the registered agent's name, which is the law firm. But they are digging. They know something is wrong. The silence from our end is making them paranoid. Good, I said. Let them dig. Keep the line silent. Maya, no responses, no counteroffers. Let them scream into the void for a few more hours. And the termination notice? Maya asked. Hold it, I said. I am going to see Nadine first. I want to make sure the knife goes in exactly between the ribs. I hung up. I finished packing, dressed in a sharp gray suit, and left the hotel. I took a circuitous route to Nadine Crowell's office, checking my rearview mirror every few blocks. It felt paranoid, but I knew how my father operated. When he felt threatened, he did not fight fair. He hired private investigators. He used intimidation. He used the weight of his checkbook to crush problems. I parked 2 blocks away and walked to the brownstone. The morning air was heavy with humidity, the sky a bruised purple. A storm was coming. Nadine was waiting for me. Her office was a sanctuary of old paper and leather. She looked calm, impervious to the chaos that was swirling in my phone. You made quite an exit, Nadine said as I sat down. She pushed a cup of coffee toward me. My sources tell me the James River Grand Club has not seen a scene like that since 1994. It was necessary, I said. And now? Nadine asked. You are ready to pull the plug? Hale Linehall is trying to unmask the owner of Lumenroot, I said. They are trying to hack my corporate filings. Nadine nodded, unsurprised. They are desperate. A desperate animal bites. We need to be careful. Penelope, you have the power to destroy the company. Yes, but we need to discuss the collateral damage. She opened a file on her desk. It was marked Lumenroot/Hale Strategy. The contract gives you the right to terminate with 30 days' notice without cause. Nadine reviewed. Legally, you are bulletproof. You can walk away, and they cannot sue you. However, if you pull the plug overnight, the Hale logistics grid collapses, trucks stop moving, warehouses overflow. She looked at me over her reading glasses. That means drivers don't get paid, she said. That means dock workers get laid off. That means the administrative staff, the ones who actually do the work while your brother plays golf, lose their health insurance. I looked out the window. I had thought about this. I had thought about it every night for the last week. I am not my father, I said quietly. I don't treat people like disposable assets. Then we need a transition plan, Nadine said. A weaponized transition plan. I am going to offer them a 90-day extension, I said. But on my terms, strict terms, they have to guarantee no layoffs during the transition. They have to pay a premium that goes directly into a severance fund for the workers, and they have to publicly acknowledge the termination. They will hate that, Nadine said, a small smile playing on her lips. It forces them to admit failure. Exactly, I said. I don't just want to bankrupt them. I want to expose them. I want the board of directors to see that Preston and Grant drove the company off a cliff and that the uneducated daughter had to build them a parachute. Very well, Nadine said. She began making notes. We will draft the termination notice with a conditional transition offer. We will frame it as an act of professional benevolence. There is one more thing, I said. The disclosure. I reached into my bag and pulled out 2 large manila envelopes. I placed them on the desk. 2 envelopes, I said. I tapped the first one. This is the business termination. The official notice from Lumenroot Advisory, cold, corporate, final. I tapped the second one. And this, I said, is the personal letter. It explains that Lumenroot is wholly owned by Penelope Ramirez. It includes the bank records showing where the startup capital came from, my own savings, not a dime of Hale money. It includes the log of every insult, every dismissal, every time they called me worthless while cashing checks generated by my algorithms. You intend to deliver these simultaneously? Nadine asked. Yes, I said. Tomorrow. I want the board to receive the business notice at the same moment my father receives the personal one. Nadine sat back in her chair. She looked at the two envelopes. She looked at me. She seemed to be weighing something. "You have played this game very well, Penelope," she said. "You have the high ground, you have the financial leverage, you have the moral argument." She opened her desk drawer. "But," she said, "Estelle knew that sometimes, even the high ground isn't enough. Sometimes, you need a cannon." She pulled out a thick bound document. It was old. The cover was yellowed, the edges worn. It looked like something that had been sitting in a safe for a very long time. "What is that?" I asked. "I told you before that your grandmother held onto a block of preferred stock," Nadine said. "I told you it had voting rights." "Yes," I said. "Leverage?" "It is more than leverage," Nadine said. She opened the document to a page marked with a red sticky note. "I did some digging into the corporate bylaws of Hale Line Hall from the 1980s, the era when your grandfather was still running things." She spun the document around so I could read it. "Read paragraph 4, section C," she instructed. I leaned in. The legal text was dense, but the meaning was unmistakable. In the event that the company fails to maintain a liquidity ratio of 1.5 for 2 consecutive quarters, or in the event of a material breach of fiduciary duty by the sitting CEO, the Class B preferred shares shall automatically convert to super voting shares, carrying 10 votes per share. I looked up at Nadine. My mouth went dry. 10 votes per share, I whispered. "Your father owns 51% of the common stock," Nadine said. "That gives him control, or it did, but Estelle's preferred shares? If they convert, they dilute his voting power. They don't just give you a seat at the table. Penelope, they give you the ability to override the CEO." "But the conditions," I said, scanning the text. "Liquidity ratio." "Hale Line Hall has been underwater for 8 months, Nadine said calmly. "They have been hiding it with creative accounting, but the raw numbers don't lie. They have triggered the clause." She tapped the paper with her finger. "This is what Estelle left you, not just money. She left you a trap door. Your father has been standing on it for years, thinking he was on solid ground." I stared at the document. This changed everything. I wasn't just a vendor threatening to leave. I wasn't just a scorned daughter with a grievance. I was the majority vote. "Does he know?" I asked. "He thinks these are just dividend shares," Nadine said. "He thinks they are harmless. He has likely forgotten this clause even exists. It was written 40 years ago." I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was a cold, electric sensation. "So," I said slowly, "I can walk into the boardroom. I can reveal I am the owner of Lumenroot. I can threaten to pull the contract. And when he tries to fire you or sue you," Nadine finished, her eyes glittering, "you can vote him out of his own chair." I sat back. The room felt suddenly small. Too small for the magnitude of the weapon lying on the desk. My phone buzzed again. It was another text from Marjorie. "Marjorie, we are sending a doctor to the hotel. We know where you are staying. Do not make this difficult. They were coming for me. They were going to try to physically drag me back into their control, to medicate me into silence. They thought they were dealing with a frightened girl." I looked at Nadine. I looked at the 2 envelopes. I looked at the yellow document. "Maya is ready," I said. "We need to move the timeline up." "How soon?" Nadine asked. "Now," I said. "I am not going to wait for them to come to my hotel. I am going to take the fight to them." I reached for the document. "Prepare the conversion papers," I told Nadine. "File them with the Secretary of State immediately. By the time I walk into the Hale headquarters, I want those votes to be live." Nadine smiled. She picked up her phone. "I will have the courier run it over within the hour," she said. I stood up. I picked up the 2 envelopes. I felt the weight of them in my hands. It was the weight of 12 years of silence. It was the weight of every missed birthday, every lonely Christmas, every moment I had spent studying in a cold apartment while my brother partied on a yacht. Penelope, Nadine said. I turned at the door. Be careful, she said. When you pull that trigger, there is no going back. You will break the family forever. I looked at her. I thought about the text from Marjorie. I thought about the uneducated comment. I thought about the mother who had died and been replaced within a year. The family was broken a long time ago, I said. I am just sweeping up the glass. I walked out into the humid Richmond air. The storm was breaking. Thunder rumbled in the distance, low and menacing. I got into my car. I placed the envelopes on the passenger seat. I typed a message to Maya. Penelope, it is a go. Initiate the legal filing, and meet me at Hale headquarters in 1 hour. Bring the full audit trail. Maya. Understood. Are we going to war? I looked at the Hale Line Hall building in the distance, rising above the skyline like a fortress. Penelope. No, we are going to an execution. I started the engine. The hunt was over. The trap was sprung. Monday morning arrived with the clinical precision of a scalpel. I was back in Kansas City. I had flown back late Sunday night on a private charter. Bringing Maya with me, we needed to be on home ground for this. We needed the fortress of the Lumen Root offices, the rows of loyal employees, and the physical distance that only 1,000 miles of cornfields and rivers could provide. I sat at my desk at 9 o'clock in the morning. My office was quiet. The river outside was moving sluggishly, a gray artery feeding the heart of the continent. On my computer screen, a notification popped up. It was a delivery confirmation from the courier service in Richmond. Package delivered, 9:02 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Signed by J. Miller, Administrative Assistant. It was done. In the lobby of the Hale Line Hall headquarters in Virginia, a young assistant had just signed for a padded envelope containing a formal notice of termination. It was a standard legal document, drafted by Nadine. Citing the 30-day exit clause, it was dry, boring, and utterly lethal. It stated that Lumen Root Advisory would cease all services, revoke all software licenses, and terminate all data feeds in exactly 1 month. But that was not the only package. I had sent a second courier. This one was not addressed to the legal department. It was addressed to the corner office on the top floor. It was marked personal and confidential. To Preston Hale. Inside that envelope was a single sheet of heavy cream paper. I had written it by hand. It did not use legal jargon. It did not reference clauses or subsections. To Preston. You have spent 3 years praising the efficiency of Lumen Root. You have told your shareholders that our work saved your company. You have built your retirement on the foundation we poured. You were right. The work is excellent. What you were wrong about is the source. I am the sole owner and founder of Lumen Root Advisory. The uneducated daughter you mocked in front of 200 people is the architect of your success. I am canceling our contract not out of revenge, but because I do not do business with people who do not respect me. I am drawing a line. Penelope Ramirez. I stared at the confirmation screen. I took a sip of black coffee. I waited. It took exactly 4 minutes. My phone, which I had placed face up on the center of my desk, lit up. Dad. It vibrated, dancing across the polished wood surface. I watched it. I did not touch it. The screen went dark, then lit up again immediately. Dad. Then again. Grant. Then again. Marjorie. It was a digital wildfire. The vibrations came so fast they blurred together into a continuous, angry hum. They were calling. They were texting. They were leaving voicemails that I knew would range from confusion to rage to panic. I sat there, my hands folded, watching the device spasm. For 12 years, I had waited for them to call. I had waited for a birthday wish, a check-in, a simple, "How are you?" The phone had been silent then. Now, when I finally wanted silence, they were desperate to be heard. I let it ring. I reached out and pressed the mute button. The room fell silent again, though the screen kept flashing. "Maya," I said into the intercom. "I see the activity." Maya's voice came back, calm and professional. "The Hale procurement team is calling the main switchboard. They are screaming at the receptionist. They want to know if it is a joke. Tell the reception team to hold the line. I said. Standard script. We have issued a formal notice. All inquiries must be directed to legal counsel in writing. Understood, Maya said. And Penelope? The flight tracking software shows the Hale corporate jet filed a flight plan 10 minutes ago. Destination? Kansas City International. I smiled. It was a cold, tight smile. They are coming. Estimated arrival time is 12:30, Maya said. They are burning fuel to get here. Let them come, I said. Prepare the conference room, the glass one. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the elevator doors in the Lumen Route lobby slid open. I was standing in the main workspace, reviewing a code update with two of my senior analysts. The office was humming with quiet productivity. It was a space of focus, clean lines, soft lighting, the gentle click of keyboards. The peace was shattered instantly. Preston Hale stormed out of the elevator. He was not wearing the tuxedo from Saturday night, nor the polished suit of a CEO. He was wearing a rumpled blazer and no tie. His face was a mottled red, sweaty and wild. Marjorie was right behind him, her heels clacking frantically on the concrete floor, clutching a designer handbag like a shield. Grant brought up the rear, looking like he wanted to punch someone. "Where is she?" Preston bellowed. His voice echoed off the exposed brick walls. My employees stopped typing. 18 heads turned. They looked at the intruder. Then they looked at me. They did not look scared. They looked confused. Who was this loud, messy man interrupting their work? I handed the tablet I was holding to my analyst. "Upload the patch," I said calmly. I turned to face my family. "Hello? Preston," I said. "You are trespassing. We usually require an appointment." Preston saw me. He stopped dead in the center of the room. He looked at me, really looked at me, standing in the center of this 18,000 square foot office, surrounded by millions of dollars of technology, commanding the attention of a room full of experts. "You," he wheezed. He pointed a shaking finger at me. This is a joke, a sick joke." "Maya," I said, not taking my eyes off him, "please escort our guests to conference room A. We are disturbing the workflow." I walked past them. I did not wait for them to follow. I walked straight into the main conference room. It was a fishbowl, floor-to-ceiling glass walls on all four sides. It was designed for transparency. Inside, there was nowhere to hide. I sat at the head of the long oak table. Preston, Marjorie, and Grant piled in after me. Maya followed them in and stood by the door, arms crossed, looking like a sentinel. Preston slammed his hands down on the table. "You cannot do this," he shouted. "You are a waitress. You are a dropout. You do not own this company." I reached into the folder sitting in front of me. I slid a document across the table. It was the Articles of Incorporation for Lumen Route Advisory, stamped with the golden seal of the state of Missouri. Date of formation: 6 years ago. Sole member and manager: Penelope Ramirez. Preston looked at the paper. He read it once. He read it twice. The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. He slumped into the nearest chair as if his legs had been cut off. "I don't understand," he whispered. Where did you get the money? Who backed you?" "I backed myself," I said. "And I had one angel investor who believed in me when you didn't." Marjorie stepped forward. She had composed herself. She put on her best smile, the one she used for charity galas. "Penelope, darling," she cooed. She reached out as if to touch my hand, but I pulled it back. "Let us not be dramatic. We are family. Families fight, yes, but they don't destroy each other. Your father was just stressed on Saturday. He didn't mean those things. He meant every word," I said. "And so did I." "Think about what you are doing," Marjorie pleaded, her eyes darting around the glass walls, seeing my employees watching us. "You are coming home. We will forget all this. We can merge the companies. You can have a role, a title, Director of Special Projects?" I laughed. It was a genuine laugh of disbelief. "A role?" I asked. Marjorie, look around you. I am the CEO. I am the owner. I don't need a made-up title in a dying company. I have built a thriving one. Grant, who had been pacing the small room like a caged tiger, finally exploded. You arrogant little witch, he shouted. He leaned over the table, his face inches from mine. Do you have any idea what happens if you cut that contract? Do you know the numbers? I know the numbers better than you do, Grant, I said coolly. I wrote the software that generates them. If you pull the routing system, the fleet stops. Grant spat. We miss deliveries. We lose the Amazon contract. We lose the Walmart contract. Revenue drops by 40% in the first month. We will have to lay off 300 drivers, 300 families. Penelope, are you ready to have that on your conscience? Are you ready to be the monster who fires working-class people just to get back at Daddy? It was a good angle. He was trying to weaponize my morality against me. I looked him in the eye. I did not blink. I expected you to say that, I said. That is why I am not just cutting the cord. I slid a second document across the table. This is a transition services agreement, I said. It offers Hale Linehall a 90-day extension of all services. Grant looked at the paper. Suspicious. 90 days? That is it? It is enough time to migrate to a new vendor, I said. But there are conditions, strict ones. I pointed to the highlighted section. Condition 1. Hale Linehall guarantees no layoffs during the transition period. Condition 2. You pay a 20% premium on all services for the next 3 months. Condition 3. That premium goes directly into a severance escrow account for the warehouse staff you were planning to fire next quarter anyway. Grant recoiled. How did you know about the warehouse cuts? I see your data, Grant, I said. I see everything. I see the emails you sent to the consultants about trimming the fat. I am not letting you use my departure as an excuse to do the dirty work you were already planning. Preston looked up from the incorporation papers. He looked old. Suddenly, incredibly old. You trapped us, he said softly. I protected myself, I corrected. We will buy you out, Preston said. His voice was gaining a little strength, falling back on the only tool he knew, money. Name your price. We will buy Lumen Root. Today, cash. I shook my head. It is not for sale. Everything is for sale, Preston shouted, slamming his fist again. 10 million? 20? Don't be an idiot. Penelope, you can take the money and go live on a beach. You don't have to pretend to be a businesswoman anymore. I am not pretending, I said. And you cannot afford me. Your liquidity is garbage. You are leveraging debt to pay the electric bill. We have reserves, Marjorie insisted. We have the family trust. I looked at Marjorie, then I looked at Preston. This was the moment. The ticking clock had run out. Speaking of reserves, I said, and speaking of trusts, I reached into my bag. I pulled out a third file. It was not a legal document from Nadine. It was a photocopy of an old bank ledger, dating back 12 years. I placed it gently in the center of the table. When Mom died, I said, looking at Preston. She left a specific account, the Education Legacy Fund. It was in her name, in a separate bank in Maryland. She showed me the passbook before she passed. She said there was $80,000 in it, enough for my tuition, enough so I would never have to ask you for a dime. Preston's face went rigid. A vein in his temple started to throb. I don't know what you are talking about, he said. His voice was too high, too fast. I think you do, I said. Because when I was 22, and you told me there was no money for my school, that account was empty. I flipped the page of the file. I had my forensic accountant trace the withdrawal history, I said. 2 weeks after Mom's funeral, the entire balance was transferred out. I pointed to the bottom of the page, to the signature line on the withdrawal slip. It was a jagged, heavy signature. Preston Hale. You stole it, I said. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. You didn't cut me off because business was bad. You stole my mother's money. money she saved for my education, and you used it to buy a boat. The Sea Witch wasn't it? The one you bought that same summer? Marjorie gasped. She looked at Preston. Preston? Is that true? It was a joint account, Preston sputtered, sweat dripping down his nose. I had legal access. It was family money. There were expenses. It was theft, I said. Moral theft, if not legal. You took the only thing she left me, and then you had the audacity to call me uneducated because I couldn't afford to finish my degree. Grant was silent. He looked at the paper, then at his father. Even he, with his elastic morality, looked disgusted. You are a fraud, Preston, I said. You are not a titan of industry. You are a petty thief who bullies his children to feel big. I stood up. The 90-day transition offer is on the table, I said. You have 24 hours to sign it. If you don't, the system goes dark on Friday at midnight, and if you try to sue me, if you try to slander me in the press, I will release this bank ledger to every business journal in Virginia. I leaned forward, placing my hands flat on the table, looming over him. So, I whispered, do we have a deal? Or do you want the world to know exactly how cheap you really are? The room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the server room next door. The sound of my machines doing the work these people could never do. Preston opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. He was defeated. Not by a lawyer, not by a competitor, but by the truth. But I wasn't done. Oh, I said, as if remembering a minor detail. There is one more thing. I looked at Maya. Maya nodded and handed me the heavy, bound document from Nadine, the one with the yellowed pages. You mentioned the family trust earlier. Marjorie, I said, you might want to read this. It turns out Grandmother Estelle didn't just leave me some advice. She left me a seat at your table. I dropped the preferred stock conversion papers onto the pile. See you at the board meeting on Friday, I said. I suggest you wear a tie. Preston, you are going to need to look professional when you explain why you are no longer the majority vote in your own company. The bank ledger lay in the center of the glass table like a loaded weapon. $82,450, I said. My voice was calm, contrasting sharply with the chaotic energy radiating from the three people sitting across from me. That was the balance on the day Mom died. It was not a fortune, but it was enough. It was 4 years of tuition at the state university. It was room and board. It was freedom. Preston stared at the photocopy. His face had shifted from red to a pasty, sickly white. He loosened his tie, his fingers fumbling with the knot. You don't understand the context, he stammered. He looked at Grant, then at Marjorie, seeking an ally, but they were staring at the paper too. That was a difficult year. The market was volatile. We had liquidity issues. I moved the funds to a central holding account to protect them. It was an accounting consolidation, a clerical necessity. It was a wire transfer to a yacht broker in Fort Lauderdale, I said. I signaled to Maya. She tapped her tablet, and the large screen on the conference room wall flickered to life. A digital image appeared, a scanned invoice from a marine dealership, dated 12 years ago. The Sea Witch, I read from the screen. 40-foot cruiser, teak decking, twin engines, paid in full. Preston flinched as if I had slapped him. It was an investment, he shouted, his voice cracking. We used that boat to entertain clients. It was for the business, and the business feeds the family. Therefore, it was for you. You told me there was no money, I said. You sat me down in that study, looked me in the eye, and told me I had to drop out because the family was broke. You let me believe I was a burden. You let me believe I was taking food out of your mouths by wanting to learn. I leaned forward. You didn't just steal the money, Preston. You stole the trajectory of my life. You stole my confidence. You forced me to scrub floors and serve coffee while you drank scotch on a deck paid for by my education. Marjorie slammed her hand on the table. The sudden noise made Grant jump. "Oh, stop it," she hissed. Her veneer of sophistication had cracked completely. Her eyes were hard. Malicious beads. "So you had a rough start. So what? Look at you now. You are sitting in a fancy office, wearing expensive clothes. Clearly, you didn't need the money. You are just being dramatic." She pointed a manicured finger at me. "You didn't have the degree, Penelope. That is a fact. Preston was right about that. You were uneducated. Don't sit here and play the victim when you clearly clawed your way up just fine. If anything, you should thank him for giving you the motivation." I looked at her. It was breathtaking, really. The ability to twist abuse into benevolence. "I am not playing a victim, Marjorie," I said coldly. "And I am certainly not thanking a thief for robbing me. I am not asking for sympathy. I am simply reading the history of this family out loud. I know you prefer the edited version, where you are the saints and I am the charity case, but here, in this room, we deal with raw data." "We will sue you," Grant interjected. He had recovered from his shock and was now trying to be the aggressor. He stood up, puffing out his chest. "You think this little ambush scares us? I will have our legal team on this by the end of the day. Defamation, breach of privacy, extortion. You are blackmailing the CEO of Hale Line Hall." "I am not blackmailing anyone," I said. "I am negotiating a contract termination." "I will go to the press," Grant threatened, pointing at the door. "I will tell every industry journal that Lumenroot is run by a vindictive, unstable woman who is using client data to settle a personal vendetta. I will ruin your reputation. No one will hire you after I am done." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Sit down, Grant," I said. "Don't tell me to—" "Sit down," I repeated, my voice sharpening into a command. "And look at the screen." Maya changed the slide. It was a collection of emails, Grant's emails. "These are the communications you sent to your consultants last month," I explained. "The ones where you discuss firing 30% of the warehouse staff to boost the quarterly EBITDA, so you could trigger your personal performance bonus. You called the workers overhead luggage. You joked about how much money you would save on health insurance." Grant went pale. "You want to go to the press?" I asked. "Be my guest. I will release these emails the same day. Let us see whose reputation survives. The unstable woman who built the most efficient logistics network in the Midwest, or the trust fund CEO who plans to fire 300 working-class people to buy a new Porsche?" Grant sank back into his chair. He looked defeated. He realized, finally, that he was bringing a knife to a drone strike. "You can't sue the truth, Grant," I said softly. "And right now, I own the truth." The room fell into a heavy silence. They were cornered. They knew it. They were waiting for the execution. They expected me to tell them to get out, to cut the contract, to burn the company to the ground. I took a breath. I looked at the three of them. My father, my stepmother, my stepbrother. They looked small. They looked pathetic. And I realized that destroying them wouldn't fix the hole they had left in me. "However," I said, they looked up, wary. "I am not interested in destroying Hale Line Hall," I said. "Not because I care about your legacy, Preston, but because I care about the people who actually do the work, the drivers, the loaders, the dispatchers, the people you call luggage." I tapped the transition services agreement that was still sitting on the table. "I am offering you a lifeline," I said. "I will grant a 90-day extension of all Lumenroot services. We will keep your trucks moving. We will keep your inventory flowing. We will help you migrate to a new system smoothly." Preston blinked. You will?" "On 3 conditions," I said, holding up 3 fingers. "On 1, I said, you sign a legally binding covenant that there will be no layoffs for the next 6 months. Not one driver, not one janitor. You will find your savings somewhere else. Maybe sell the boat. 2, I continued, you will pay a 20% premium on our services for the duration of the transition. That money will be deposited directly into a severance fund for the staff. controlled by a third-party administrator. And 3, I said, looking at Grant. You will issue a joint press release with Lumen Root. You will state that our partnership is ending amicably due to a strategic realignment. You will thank us for our service, and you will never, ever speak my name in public again. If I hear a whisper of unstable or uneducated, the deal is void and the lights go out. Preston looked at the contract. He looked at me. He was trying to calculate the angle. He couldn't understand why I wasn't going for the throat. I can pay you, he said suddenly. I frowned. What? I can buy you out, Preston said, leaning forward. Desperation was making him manic. Forget the contract. Sell me Lumen Root. I will pay you double whatever it is worth. I will write the check right now. We can call it an acquisition. You get rich. We get the tech. And we don't have to talk about the past. I looked at him with genuine pity. You still don't get it, I said. You think this is a transaction. You think you can write a check to cover the cost of 12 years of neglect? It is business, Preston insisted. Everything has a price. Penelope? Value has a price, I corrected. Dignity does not. You aren't trying to pay for the value of my company. Dad, you are trying to pay so you don't have to apologize. You are trying to buy your way out of guilt. I pushed the checkbook away. My company is not for sale, not to you. Then we are at an impasse, Preston shouted. He stood up again, his face turning purple. I am the majority shareholder of Hale Linehall. I control the board. I will not let you dictate terms to me in my own company. I will find another vendor. I will crush you. You don't control the board, a voice said. It wasn't mine. We all turned to the screen. Maya had patched in a video call. Nadine Crowell's face appeared, sharp and high definition, from her office in Richmond. Hello, Preston, Nadine said calmly. Nadine? Preston squinted at the screen. What is this? You were my mother's lawyer. You have no business here. I am Penelope's lawyer now, Nadine said, and I have everything to do with this. Dad, I said. Sit down. There is one more document you need to see. I opened the final folder, the one Nadine had given me in Richmond. I pulled out the yellowed, bound document and the fresh filing receipt from the Secretary of State. You believe you own 51% of the voting shares, I said. That was true yesterday. It is true today. Preston barked. Nadine, I said, please explain the bylaws to him. Certainly, Nadine's voice filled the room. Preston, when your mother injected capital into the company in 1998, she received Class B preferred stock. You always treated those shares as non-voting financial instruments. Because they are, Preston shouted. They are preferred stock. They just pay dividends. Read paragraph 4, section C of the original shareholder agreement, Nadine recited. In the event that the company's liquidity ratio falls below 1.5 for 2 consecutive quarters, which it has, those Class B shares automatically convert to supervoting shares, 10 votes per share. Preston froze. He looked like he was trying to do the math in his head and failing. That is impossible, he whispered. Mother would never. She did, I said. She knew you, Dad. She knew that one day your ego would outrun your competence. She built a kill switch. And here's the relevant part, Nadine continued. Upon her death, those shares did not pass to the general estate. They were held in a specific trust. The beneficiary of that trust is Penelope Ramirez. I slid the filing receipt across the glass table. As of 9 o'clock this morning, I said, I filed the conversion paperwork. I now hold 40% of the voting power in Hale Linehall, combined with the independent directors who are already tired of your mismanagement. I have the majority. Preston stared at the paper. His hands were shaking so hard the glass table vibrated. She had no right, he roared. He looked up at the ceiling, as if screaming at his dead mother. That was my company. I built it. She was just an old woman. She had no right to give my inheritance to her. She had every right, I snapped. My voice echoed, silencing his tantrum. It was her asset, Preston, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. Just like the education fund was my mother's asset, you think you are entitled to everything just because you are a Hale man? You think the women in this family exist just to fund your hobbies and absorb your failures? I stood up. I walked to the head of the table. My mother had a right to save for my future. My grandmother had a right to protect her investment. And I have a right to stop you from driving this company off a cliff. Preston slumped into his chair. He looked broken. The bluster was gone. Marjorie was staring at me with open horror. Grant looked like he was going to be sick. "What do you want?" Preston whispered. "You want to fire me? Is that it? You want to humiliate me?" "I don't need to humiliate you," I said. "You did that yourself on Saturday night." I gathered my papers. I signaled Maya to end the call with Nadine. "The board meeting is on Friday," I said. "We will discuss the transition plan then. We will discuss the severance packages. And we will discuss the change in leadership." I walked to the door of the conference room. I put my hand on the handle, then turned back to look at them one last time. They sat in the glass box, exposed, powerless, and small. "Don't be late," I said. "And Preston, don't bother sitting at the head of the table." I looked him dead in the eye. "That seat is taken." Friday morning broke with a sky the color of slate, heavy and impartial. I walked into the Hale Line Hall headquarters in Richmond at 8:45. I was not alone. Nadine walked on my left, carrying the weight of the legal system in her briefcase. Maya walked on my right, carrying the irrefutable truth of the data. We did not stop at the reception desk. We did not ask for permission. We took the executive elevator straight to the 12th floor. The boardroom was already full. The long mahogany table was occupied by the 7 members of the board of directors. At the head sat my father, Preston Hale. To his right was Grant. To his left, Marjorie sat in a chair usually reserved for the corporate secretary, looking pale and tightly wound. When the heavy glass doors swung open and I stepped inside, the conversation died instantly. "You cannot be in here," Preston snapped. Standing up, he looked tired. The last 3 days of silence from my end had clearly eroded his nerves. "This is a closed session for board members only. We are discussing the vendor crisis." "I know what you are discussing," I said. My voice was level, projecting easily to the back of the room. "And I am not here as a vendor." I walked to the empty seat at the opposite end of the table. I did not ask if I could sit. I pulled the chair out and settled into it. "I am here as a shareholder," I said. "And as of Monday morning, I control the largest single voting block in this company." Preston looked at the other directors. He forced a laugh, a desperate, cracking sound. "Gentlemen, please excuse my daughter. She is laboring under a misunderstanding regarding some old family paperwork. Security will escort her out." "Sit down." "Preston," a deep voice rumbled. It was Arthur Sterling, the longest-serving independent director on the board. He was a man of few words and zero patience for nonsense. He was looking at a tablet that Nadine had just slid across the table to him. "The paperwork looks in order," Arthur said, glancing at my father over his spectacles. "Class B preferred conversion, 40% voting rights. If she aligns with the minority shareholders, she has the floor. Let her speak." Preston sank back into his chair. He looked like a man who had just realized the parachute he packed was full of silverware. "Thank you, Arthur," I said. I signaled to Maya. She connected her laptop to the room's main display. "You are here to discuss the termination of the Lumen Root contract," I began. "You have been told that this is a sudden, hostile act by a predatory vendor. You have been told that the price hike is extortion." I clicked a button. A graph appeared on the screen. "The reality is that Hale Line Hall is on life support," I said. "For 3 years, my company has provided the artificial intelligence that routes your trucks, manages your fuel, and predicts your inventory. We didn't just help you, we became your central nervous system because your CEO fired the internal teams to cut costs." I looked at Grant. He was staring at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. "The proposal on the table," I continued, is a 90-day transition plan. It ensures that no trucks stop moving. It ensures that your customers, Amazon, Walmart, Target, do not void their contracts. It gives you time to find a new partner. At a 20% premium, Grant muttered. It is robbery. It is a penalty, I corrected. For 3 years of disrespect. I clicked the remote again. The screen changed. But before we vote on the transition, I said, I want to address the leadership that brought us here. Grant, perhaps you can explain your Strategic Vision 2030 document that you presented to this board last month? Grant's head snapped up. That is confidential internal strategy. It is a copy-paste job, I said. On the screen, 2 documents appeared side by side. On the left was a white paper Lumen Root had sent to the Hale executive team 6 months ago, titled Future of Freight Automation. On the right was Grant's presentation. They were identical, paragraph for paragraph. He hadn't even bothered to change the font. You presented my team's work as your own original thought, I said to the board. You claimed you were building a proprietary internal system. You lied. You have no system. You have a PowerPoint presentation and a subscription to my software. The directors began to murmur. Arthur Sterling turned to Grant, his face darkening. Is this true, son? Did you draft this strategy, or did you steal it? Grant opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at Marjorie, but she was staring at her hands. He was exposed. He wasn't the brilliant heir. He was a plagiarist in a suit. And Preston, I said, turning my gaze to the head of the table. My father flinched. We need to talk about fiduciary duty, I said. The board might be interested to know why the CEO of this company felt it necessary to siphon money from a family education trust to cover his personal liquidity problems. That is a personal matter, Preston shouted, slamming his hand on the table. It has nothing to do with the company. It has everything to do with character, Arthur Sterling interjected. If a man will steal from his own daughter, what will he do to the shareholders? I nodded to Maya. She displayed the bank ledger, the withdrawal slip, the yacht invoice. He told you he was a self-made man, I said to the room. He told me I was uneducated because we couldn't afford tuition. The truth is, he stole my future to buy a boat. He is not a leader. He is a liability. The room was silent. It was the silence of a structure collapsing, not with a bang, but with the groaning surrender of rot. I propose a vote, I said clearly. The Lumen Root Transition Agreement is approved immediately, I stated, including the clause that mandates no layoffs for the next 6 months and establishes a severance fund for the warehouse staff. I looked at Preston. And secondly, I propose a motion of no confidence in the current CEO and his designated successor. Preston stood up. He was shaking. You can't do this. I am the face of this company. I am Preston Hale. You were, I said. Now, you are just a line item we are deleting. Arthur Sterling cleared his throat. I second the motion. The vote was swift. It was brutal. Hands went up around the table. Preston watched them rise, one by one. His friends, his colleagues, the men he had played golf with for 20 years. They all voted against him, not because they loved me, but because I had shown them the one thing they couldn't ignore. He was bad for business. When the meeting ended, Preston was no longer CEO. He was not offered the role of honorary chairman. He was not offered a consulting fee. He was offered a cardboard box and an escort to the parking lot. Grant was stripped of his executive title and moved to a junior sales role in the Nebraska branch, a mercy I allowed only so he could learn what actual work felt like. I stood in the lobby an hour later. The air conditioning felt cold, but clean. Preston came out of the elevator. He was carrying a small box of personal effects. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The bluster was gone. The arrogance had evaporated, leaving behind a confused, elderly man who had forgotten how to be human without a title to prop him up. He saw me standing by the door. He stopped. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. There was no music swelling in the background. There were no tears, just the sterile hum of the building he used to own. "Penelope," he said. His voice was a rasp. "Preston," I replied. He looked down at his box, then back at me. His eyes were wet. You really don't need me, do you?" he asked. It was a question that carried the weight of his entire ego. He had spent his life convincing himself that I was the needy one, the weak one, because it made him feel strong. "No, Dad," I said gently. "I haven't needed you for a very long time. You just finally noticed it today." He nodded slowly. He looked like he wanted to say something else. Perhaps an apology. Perhaps an excuse. But he didn't have the language for it. He walked past me, through the revolving doors, and out into the parking lot. I watched him go. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, quiet relief. It was like putting down a heavy suitcase I'd been carrying for 12 years. I turned to Nadine. "The settlement money from the education fund," I said. "The $82,000 plus interest." "Yes?" Nadine asked. "We will wire it to your personal account?" "No," I said. "Create a scholarship foundation, the Maria Ramirez Scholarship for Supply Chain Excellence. It will pay full tuition for students who have the grades, but not the money. Students who are told they are uneducated because they are poor." Nadine smiled. "Your mother would have liked that." "She would have," I agreed. "It is time to put the money back where it belongs." I walked out of the building. The sun had broken through the gray clouds. The pavement was wet and shining. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of rain and exhaust and freedom. I didn't look back at the Hale Line Hall Tower. I didn't care if they succeeded or failed without me. That was their story now. I got into my car. Maya was in the passenger seat, already typing on her laptop. "Where to?" she asked. "Back to the airport?" "Yes," I said. "Back to Kansas City. We have work to do." I started the engine. I merged onto the highway, watching the Richmond skyline fade in the rearview mirror until it was just a smudge on the horizon. My father had mocked me for being a waitress. He had mocked me for being a nobody. He had tried to write my story for me, but as I drove toward the future I had built with my own 2 hands, I realized the truth. The cruelest thing you can do to the people who hurt you isn't to destroy them. It isn't to scream at them. It is to grow so big, so bright, and so complete that they simply cease to exist in your universe. They become irrelevant, and as I crossed the state line, leaving the Hale legacy behind in the dust, I had never felt more relevant in my life. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed seeing Penelope take back her power, please let us know in the comments where you are listening from. We love hearing from our community all over the world. Don't forget to subscribe to Monica Revenge Stories, like the video, and smash that hype button to help this story reach more people who need a reminder that their value is written by them, not by anyone else.